So just a sync sound. Just say your name and then clap for me.
Jordan Dawson.
So for this interview, just look at me. Don't worry about anything else. So I guess the easiest way to start out is how would you describe yourself?
I think I would first start out by saying like pretty individualistic and like emotion/feeling driven, I think I would say.
Mm-hmm.
More so as in like first response type thing is more like as an emotion is what I lead with, I guess is how I would describe like how I go through everyday life.
So instinctual.
Yeah. But then in times of like not stress, I get more into like my head and like going through almost every situation that I've been through like the entire day. Like and almost like a reenactment of like what I should have done different, what I should have done better, what I did well. It's like almost like a constant like checking of myself in a way, on top of the feelings all the time. So it can get deep sometimes. We'll just go with that.
So you spend a lot of time in your head?
Yeah, I would say so. A lot of time.
What's something that you believe that you think is that other people would think is unbelievable?
A lot of things. I look at the world pretty differently. I don't like to like label myself as a like into one group or another type thing. I would say I really go by, like if we're just talking in life in general, I think that everything happens for a reason and for a purpose, and that everything is kind of like intertwined in this like symphony of life, and whatever this is that we're living, it's all like happening for a reason and for a purpose, and everybody's individual experiences are all like equally meaningful in that grand scheme, and like kind of all mixed together into one. And I've definitely gotten some backlash on that type of thinking because I think society kind of is more in like the like nothing matters type attitude. We're all just here living life, and like what you say doesn't matter, what you do doesn't matter, just do what you want. As long as it's cool with yourself, then everything's good. So I think that's kind of a big difference in where I stand versus kind of how I see the world going. At least like, I guess not the world, I don't know everybody in the world, but you know what I mean. Like in the circle that I'm around, I guess, is the society that I see and live in has more of that attitude versus kind of how I see the world.
And how do you see the world?
What do you mean, like?
Well, you
like the physical world, or like the like life?
Let's start with the physical world.
The physical world, I don't believe in the mainstream definition of our physical world. I don't believe that the earth moves, and I also believe that the earth is the center of our being, and that, the sun and the moon revolve around us instead of us revolving around the sun. So I guess instead of a heliocentric model, I lean more toward a geocentric model, if we're talking about the physical elements of the world.
So, so I'm just making sense of this. So, like, there's space, right?
Maybe.
Maybe?
Yeah.
We'll go into that.
I don't know, like, what space really is. I find it hard to, like, understand, like, a vacuum being next to a non-vacuum without there being a barrier in between that. Like, we're told that it's the atmosphere, but that's just gas. So how is gas keeping vacuum from non-vacuum? Like, but, like, where does that end? Where does that stop? And where does that end? Like, that for me is kind of hard to wrap my mind around. And then also, when you look at, like, space agencies, like the big ones, NASA, a lot of the information that they put out is computer generated images. There's been tons of people that have gone on and taken images off of their own websites, like NASA's website, and put them on Photoshop and, like, looked at all of the overlays and all of the different, like, things that they've changed on there. And it's not everything that they put out, but there's just, like, people that have dug and done research and found discrepancies in, like, the sizes of countries and different photos, and the Earth being, like, completely different colors, and like, different ratios of the sizes. Like, one picture will be America's taking up, like, half the globe, and then the next picture it's taking up, like, a third of it or a quarter of it. Like, it's just weird stuff. And then if you get into, like, space travel, like, if you think about travel in general and, like, physics, planes push off air, boats push off water. Like, we're told, like, that spaceships, what are they pushing off? Like, when they're going, if there's nothing up there, it's just a vacuum. We're told they're, like, jet propulsion, and there's, like, fire and fuel burning, but you can't have a fire in a vacuum where there's no oxygen. So there's just, like, a lot of different things that start to not add up when it comes to space. So it's just hard for me to, like, go along with what we're told, I guess, every day. And then you get into the aspect of, okay, then you're like, okay, well, that's crazy conspiracy theory. It would take, like, a big group to keep that all quiet. And then you start looking at, okay, well, then who's involved? You look at NASA, and all of the people that have been to space or been on the moon are all Freemasons, and are all in that secret society. So then, like, you start looking at secret societies, and you find out that they're basically in every single facet of our society, in healthcare and education and the finance and politics. And it's all just, like, one big game of, like, keeping knowledge separate from the public, basically. It's kind of how I see it, like, keeping us dumbed down and easily controlled. Because basically we're, like, we're like slaves pretty much to the system. I mean, whether you want to think that way or not, like, nobody really wants to have a job. Nobody really wants to go to school. Like, we want to live our life and build relationships and, like, fulfill the things and the purposes that we feel that we've been given. But we're stuck having to work a job that we may not want to work, to make money, to pay bills, to, like, go through all these motions of, well, that's just society, well, that's just this. But I think that it's a way to, like, keep us enslaved mentally and physically. So, sorry, that was kind of a tangent.
No, it leads to a lot of questions. So it's the secret society. Is it is Freemasons? Is that?
That's one of them.
One.
I mean, there's a ton of different branches. Like, there's all kinds. There's Skull and Bones. There's Freemasons. There's Knights Templar. There's other ones that I don't even know the name of. Like, there's all different kinds of branches. And, like, the thing with this society is that they don't give everybody all the information. You have to work your way up through different degrees and, like, basically be shoulder tapped into, like, moving up into the next phase of the fraternity. And I don't know a ton about it, but because I'm not in it, obviously. But I've watched a lot of videos of whistleblowers that have been in the societies and like talked about the oaths that they have to take in order to get into the Freemasons, and how it like lines up with the same oath that you have to take to get in to become a witch, like to be in witchcraft and be into that group. So they like kind of all like intermingle in a way, if that makes sense.
Wait, can you explain witchcraft? I'm not really sure what you mean by that.
So like, I think when it boils down, like there's good and evil, and there's good forces and there's evil forces, and there's ways to interact with the supernatural world that we've learned over generations. And I think witchcraft is a way to like open up yourself into that supernatural realm and invite different entities or energies or whatever you want to call it into your life. And I think that those energies have an effect on like the surroundings, and it depends on like what you're doing with it. I mean, it depends on, and I've never done it myself, so I don't know like everything that it entails, but what I've heard is that it's like you're basically like making an exchange in a way, to like you're giving up some part of you in order to gain some other type of power. Like a lot of times you'll undergo like physical ailments because you're like dabbling in different types of magics, and I've seen that like firsthand. I worked at a clinic in Portland, Oregon, and we had people that were coming in and having like unexplained physical pain, and you know they're getting tried medications, like, and they're coming to us because we're natural medicine, so they've already tried regular medicine, and they come to us and like they're getting acupuncture and massage and herbs and supplements and this and that, and like nothing can like touch what's going on with them, and nobody can explain what's going on with them or why they have this chronic pain. But then like you look at their chart and they're also like getting mental health stuff, like mental health care, because it was like an integrative facility that we were at, and a lot of them admit to like dabbling in like black magic and like seances, and like they don't get into detail, but they talk about that. So like you kind of see that correlation. So I guess that's how I would kind of explain it. And again, I'm not in it, so I don't.
Right.
I'm just kind of on the outside looking in.
And so, did you first kind of learn about this kind of world of witchcraft and the like from while you were working in Portland, or is this something?
I would say that it was something growing up that I thought was like fake. I think, like not like, yeah, witches are from a movie or from like old wives' tales and blah blah blah. And then I experienced like a lot of them living out there in Oregon.
What do you mean by you experienced them?
So I met a lot of witches out there. Worked with some. My very next door neighbor, like on the other side of the wall from me, claimed to be practicing Wiccan, and had like a lot of tattoos that were like symbols and pentagrams, and like she pretty much like told us like I'm a witch, like
Yeah.
And then I guess the experiences, like we felt like definitely a change, and had a few like weird supernatural physical experiences while we were living there in that apartment, but not until like after she moved in. And there was like we didn't have like beef with them, but we could tell that she didn't like really like us very much. Like we started hanging out with them and like going out to dinner and like trying to like spend time with them and build a relationship, and then all of a sudden it was just like non-existent and kind of like weird. So we were like, oh, okay, whatever. And you know, a lot of this I didn't put together until afterward, but like I was laying in bed one night, and like woke up out of a sleep, and literally felt like a presence like in between my wife and I, like in bed with us, like pushing us apart from each other. And like it went away, but like I'd never felt like something like actually there. And then my wife felt she had another like experience where she had felt like she was being attacked by like could hear like howling and growling dogs like coming after her. So it like felt like we were being like bombarded by like negative energies and stuff like that. And then we were walking around our lunch break at work one day, and my wife just like all of a sudden bang hits the ground and is like, what the heck, what just hit me? And like she like face like just straight up went to the ground and like was like, what just hit my neck? Like did you throw something? Did somebody just throw like something at me, or did I get stung? And like we couldn't figure out like what hit her or what, but it was just like bang, like straight to the ground, and like she felt like something hit her. And then we worked at the clinic, so we went straight in there and was like, hey, like we don't know what just happened, but like she just got like major pain and like literally went to the ground. They had no idea like what happened either, and it was just like, oh, you must have just gotten a kink or whatever. But now like looking back, and I didn't like start researching into things until I moved back here to Indiana and had a lot more time on my hands. And like looking back now, I think that was definitely like some sort of supernatural like attack too, because she was working at the front desk and I'm a medical assistant in the office, and like they wouldn't get in fights with people at the front desk, but like people get angry when they have to pay too much or when they can't get their medication on time or blah blah blah. So there's always like irritated people there. So I'm not like trying to attribute it to that, but like you start putting together experiences with knowledge and like forming opinions on that, and that's like a theory that I think is plausible. So I think that's what like kind of started opening me up to the supernatural realm, and like looking into it more. So.
And I guess how do you go about researching something like this?
Something like what? Or just like
well, I guess first specifically, like you knew that your neighbor practiced witchcraft, so
mm-hmm.
I guess you moved back here. How do you said you started researching the subject. How did you go about doing that?
So there's like a few different methods that I use, like I guess different mediums. I watch like different lectures online or listen to podcasts of researchers. I read books, obviously. I try to like get a lot of different angles and kind of form my opinion based off of multiple ideas instead of getting pigeonholed into the like mainstream view of stuff. But for that specifically, like my family bought a Masonic temple, and it's like a wedding venue now, but it used to be a Masonic temple, and that's what really got my research like started. Was I was like, that's kind of interesting. I'm gonna start looking into the Freemasons, and then just like snowballed into where I am today. But like I think that Freemasonry, when you get into the higher degrees, is pretty like intertwined with the supernatural realm and witchcraft, whatever you want to call it. I don't even know what to call it. I think that we're given terms that are like half-truths in a way. So I don't know. I also come from a place too where I know that I don't know everything and I don't understand everything, and I'm okay with that. And I think that it becomes a problem when you put a wall up in your thinking or in your research because you don't understand something, or information that you're being given is not like the mainstream, or it's not from a mainstream source. I think a big part of my life changing was when I was able to come to a place where I could put like my ego aside and put like pride aside, basically, and be like, I could be wrong about this, like about these things that I've believed like my whole life, and start like looking into it. But I think getting to that point of becoming like truly becoming open-minded is pretty important, especially like in today's society of we getting into like everybody's just jumping on trends like crazy, and if you don't jump on the trend, then F you, basically. Like that's kind of how we've gotten to. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it answers a lot. So how do you know like when a trust, or how do you know like when a source is like worth trust? Like how do you know when like the difference between like a source that's like, oh, this is clearly like someone's lying, and like this is clearly research? Like how do you separate those?
I think for me, like, you almost have to consume all of it. You almost have to look at every source, like mainstream, mainstream alternate news, people on Twitter, people on YouTube, people that have podcasts and do like independent journalism. I think a lot of the time it's like a sense too, in a way that I've obviously like learned to trust my own like gut and senses over the time, and trusting what I'm seeing and trusting what I'm hearing, and like putting two and two together and trusting that my mind is working logically like it's supposed to be, and seeing dots and putting them together. So I think you have to kind of take everything like as a grain of salt, and like even me telling you this stuff, like I don't want you to believe what I'm telling you. I want you to go like look for yourself and look at alternative sources and find. I also find that like life experiences and people's like life that people have experienced and things that people have experienced, that even if they don't like meet the mainstream narrative, I think that you have to like give a certain amount of weight to that too. So like trying to understand people's experiences better helps me understand like different topics too. I like to listen to like interviews and whistleblowers and that kind of thing, and get like people that have been involved in stuff but like have left it, and why, and like what caused them to, and this and that. I think those experiences are pretty valid, but a lot of times get pushed by the wayside as like a conspiracy because it doesn't fit the narrative, basically.
Do you think it's a possibility that the reason it's labeled a conspiracy by the very people who are trying to, like, it's labeled conspiracy by the Freemasons, these different organizations, so you'll continue to believe what the mainstream believes?
I think that's part of it. I think that kind of goes along with like the mental slavery that I touched on a little bit earlier. I mean, there's been CIA whistleblowers that have admitted to the CIA being involved in like large operation mind control, and being intertwined with Hollywood and pushing different agendas through Hollywood, and like them working together, the CIA and Hollywood working together to push certain ideals on America. And you see that still today in our movies and our TV and our music, and you see like how that has changed our society. And I'm not going to get into like what I think is good and what I think is bad, but you can see the change in like how America was in the 50s morally and how it is today, and then how TV and entertainment was in the 50s, and then how it slowly progressed, and slowly they started cussing more and having more sex and having more this and having more that, and it's just been like a slow drip of them kind of slowly changing society. But then on the flip side, you could say, oh, well, society changed, and that's why entertainment and TV and music and stuff changed. So it's a point of view, basically, like, because I've gotten that argument back, and it could make sense too. So
So, what's the? I mean, obviously this is speculation, but what do you think is the ultimate goal of these organizations, like the Freemasons? Because this is a worldwide organization, right?
yeah, I think so.
So, what for them is the end goal?
I think that the end goal is, I look at the world as like a spiritual battle for our souls, like good and evil. I believe in the creator of our world and universe and us, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Joseph and David, and believe in Christ. And I believe that the enemy is in charge of this realm right now, whether you want to call him the devil or Satan or Lucifer. I think that he has been given charge of the realm that we're in right now, and I think that he has been able to, with the help of fallen angels that were cast out with him, have been able to like slowly intermingle with humans and slowly work with humans to basically keep us away from understanding who we truly are, who our creator truly is, basically keep us from knowing like our actual worth in this creation that we're in. So I think it's like it's a spiritual battle as well.
And so
there's a lot of layers to it.
yeah, it sounds like it. I guess is there a point in time where you could say like this is when like is there a point when like humans were on the right path, right? And before, right, we have this modern culture. Was there a point in time when these fallen angels, as you said, came down? Like, is there a single point in time or an area in which that happened? Or has it been since the beginning of...
So if you look at Genesis 6 talks about the sons of God coming down and seeing the daughters of men and finding them attractive, and coming into them is the verb that is used, and like creating offspring. So I think that it's been going on since like the beginning of our written history. And like, I think that's... we're getting such into a rabbit hole right now, because now we're getting into biblical theology, and I've like, this isn't even mainstream like biblical theology, so it's like on the fringe of that even. And I lost my train of thought. So like they came down and bred with humans, and like basically we're trying to like breed free will out of humans, because like the gift that they want that we have over them is free will. Like, we are able to choose God or choose not to believe in God, and you know, we basically choose everything all the time. We have a choice, yes or no, this or that. Like, and I think that the enemy's plan was to take that away and breed that out of us genetically. And I think that's why in the Old Testament you see God like completely wiping out the entire earth with the flood, and then afterward like going and wiping out tribes in the Middle East in biblical times. But then if you start looking at Old Testament, you start seeing that there's giants mentioned in the Old Testament after the flood, and names them by name. And then it names like the tribes that they're in, and that like their parents, and the names that like align up with other extra biblical texts that talk about the fallen angels too. So it's not like just from the Bible, it's from other texts from ancient times as well. And like, so it's basically been like throughout our history that they've been kind of trying to manipulate creation. But I mean, the enemy, the devil, is like the ultimate manipulator, the ultimate perverter and deceiver. So why wouldn't that? I mean, it's hard to explain because there's just so many like layers to it that a lot of people don't believe, honestly. So like the deeper that I get into this conversation with you, the more I'm gonna have to answer questions, because like it's just gonna keep going. So I guess, what was your original question? Was there a point of time where like I think now's the point of time. I think ever since Christ made the ultimate sacrifice and sacrificed his blood, and his blood touched this realm and became the sacrifice for our sin, now's the chance. Like now's the opportunity to be good, and to choose good, and to choose Christ, and to let him transform our lives. Like that's the only thing that's left.
So I guess as an individual, what can we do?
As an individual, you have to look at yourself as an individual and understand that you're an individual with individual gifts and individual thoughts and individual feelings, and that you do not have to follow everyone else. You don't have to. You don't have to believe what everybody else believes. You don't have to think how everybody else thinks. You don't have to say what everybody else says. You don't have to party because everybody else parties. You don't have to like Trump because a bunch of people like Trump. Like, you don't have to do any of that stuff. Like, you need to work on yourself. Like, that's the only thing that we have power to do, is to change our own self and our own heart. And I think once we figure out our own shit, it enables us to be able to truly help other people, like in a positive way. So, but yeah, it's like really individualistic. Even religion, like I don't affiliate myself with a church or with a certain denomination or this or that. Like, I really truly believe that it's a personal relationship with your creator that only you can make different. Like, you have to choose to talk to him. You have to choose to put time into listening and meditating and being still and not consuming everything that we're given on a daily basis. I think that's one of like the main things that the enemy does, is like distract. I think like we're on our phones 24/7 just scrolling and like stimulating our brain with this. Like, we're just consuming. We're not sitting back and thinking about what we're consuming. We're just constantly in consume mode. And no wonder we're so like overwhelmed and so emotional and so uptight and like full of rage, because we don't sit back and think about like the world as a whole. We get sucked into these little distractions that keep us from going within and bettering ourselves and bettering the world.
Do you ever fear the evil outside forces will ever get to you?
I think that when you put truth into the world, and when you like you're basically putting a target on your back, because you're acknowledging that they're there. I mean, the greatest lie the devil ever told is that he didn't exist. So if you don't believe that there even is a spiritual war, then perfect. because I got you right where I want you. If you don't care, then I'm just going to leave you alone. But I think that, yeah, you get attacked, you get spiritually attacked, but ultimately I have authority over them through the blood of Christ and through the name of Christ. But that doesn't mean like that they're gonna stop. That just means that I gotta dig in, and I gotta not stop trying to better myself, and trying to spread truth to people and love people and listen to God and try to do what God wants me to do and try to be where He wants me to be. But yes, I'm not going to get into specifics, but yes, I don't fear the evil, but I definitely sense it around me a lot more that I've gotten into, like, researching stuff and breaking out of some of the mental, I don't even know what you want to call it, like, just breaking free of society's, like, strangleholds on our minds and our lives. And it's not even society, like, I don't know why I'm using that term, but you know what I mean, I guess.
So, you mentioned something earlier that I guess you kind of mentioned in passing that, at least I find interesting and don't really know anything about. You mentioned that after the flood, there were giants.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that? I don't know
Yeah.
what that means.
So the big, like, main one that everybody knows about is David and Goliath. So there's, like, the verses about Goliath, and then there's also other areas in the Bible, in the Old Testament, in Kings and Chronicles and 1st and 2nd Samuel, that talk about different groups of people that were giants. And there's actually, I wish I knew the exact passage, but there is a story in there in one of the Samuels, when King David and his men are going to defeat a group of people, and God told them to measure the people, and if they were, like, over a certain height, I think it was like 2 rods. It's not even like English measurement system, so it's like, how tall is that? But then you look at how tall that actually is, and it's like 8 or 9 feet tall. So, like, they were going in and, like, systematically killing off the giants, basically, and King David was. But then, man, you can follow, like, past the Bible, and there's archaeological evidence of giants here in America, here in Indiana, like, with double rows of teeth, with 6 fingers and 6 toes, with horns on the base of their skulls. There's tons and tons of Native American oral history that talks about different wars that they had with giants in Nevada, around the Great Lakes, around, like, the major rivers here in America. There was supposedly a big battle between Indians and giants on the Ohio River right by Louisville and Jeffersonville, like, just right here in Indiana. I was reading about that the other day. But, mainstream, like, archaeology doesn't want to talk about what the Indians have to say, and we want to, scream about how racist everybody is, but how racist is that? Like, we're just going to completely, like, not even listen to this whole group of people's history that they've not written it down, so we don't believe it. Like, their oral history is, like, just as accurate, if not more accurate, than the history books that we have in our schools now. So, like, that's a big thing that I don't understand about the whole giant thing, is, like, why does it get suppressed? There's mounds, State Park here in Anderson, and there's another mound in Ohio called the Serpent Mound, and it's, like, pretty big. It's like miles long. It's like a snake, serpent. And mainstream archaeology says, oh, the Native Americans made that.
The Adena Hopewell tribe.
Yeah, they say it was the Dina Hopewell tribe. But then you go to the leaders of that tribe, and they're like, no, we didn't build those mounds. The race of giants that was here before us, they built those mounds. But we don't want to acknowledge the Native American history. We just want to go with whatever feeds our narrative that, oh, well, giants are just like a fantasy. But there's like literally actual proof of them, so.
So why do you think why do you think we don't teach this history in school, or why is it that we have to go to these alternative sources to find these kind of things?
I think that's just part of the general dumbing down of people. The whole concept of everybody in America, K through 12, is on the same curriculum, learning all of the same stuff, is just so strange to me that it just seems fishy to me that that's what our education system is, and also that it's so like regurgitate, like here's information, now you have to regurgitate it, and that's what your grade's based off of, is regurgitating information that we give you. So like right from the bat, we get put in the mode of, you remember what I say, and then you repeat it back to me, and if you don't, then you get a bad grade. So it's like, and I think that you have to tie that back into like who's truly in control of America, the world, whatever, which I don't know, so don't even ask me that.
So what happened? Did the race of giant? Did they just go extinct, or are they still living in somewhere in the world, or what happened to?
I think the majority of them are not around. I've heard of stories as late as 2015 of American military killing a giant in Afghanistan, but that's like been scrubbed from mainstream too. I mean, there's like YouTube videos about it and whistleblowers that are anonymous and that kind of thing, but like I've heard, I think 3 of the supposed soldiers that were there, and then an interview from a helicopter pilot that like flew the body out from Afghanistan and brought it to a base in Ohio. So I mean, they probably still exist at somewhere. I mean, I don't know if they're like, I mean, maybe that's Bigfoot. Who knows? I mean, maybe that's why people have Bigfoot sightings and they just don't understand what they're seeing. It could be a giant. Or maybe, I don't know. There's a lot of I don't knows, but I think I'd rather not know than be like so set in a way that I'm not open to other ideas.
So you think Bigfoot is most likely giants?
Maybe. I don't really know. So I don't know if you're familiar with the book of Enoch. It's an extra biblical text. Enoch was 7th from Adam, I think, and the 7th from Adam and 7, I don't remember exactly, but he was a prominent like Old Testament figure. He was one of the 2 people in the Bible that didn't have a physical death. God just took him up to heaven. And then the book of Enoch is also mentioned in the book of Jude in the New Testament. So it's like, it's not canonized, but it's mentioned in the Bible, and Enoch's in the Bible. And it was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls with a lot of the biblical books. But anyway, it talks about during that time when the angels fell and were breeding with women, they were also breeding and like messing with DNA of animals and like creating animal hybrids too. So then you get into like all of that, like what, like, there's just that whole rabbit trail too. So, but it could be like an animal-human hybrid. It could be a supernatural entity that is appearing to you in a physical form. Because I've heard a lot of like people that have had encounters with Bigfoot that like time doesn't seem to like exist anymore, and like they feel like they're really slowed down, or like they like are with each other but they can't talk to each other and stuff, like weird stuff like that, that's like more spiritual, supernatural, and not just like oh whoa, what was that? It was like, I don't know, there was more to it. So I'm not really sure I fully understand the Bigfoot phenomena yet, but it's definitely interesting.
Yeah. So, if I said to you that tomorrow you could change the entire educational system in the United States, what would you do that isn't being done now?
I think that it's going to sound kind of radical, and it wouldn't work because our society isn't formed for it. But I think given the responsibility of education back to the parents and not to the state or the federal government, I think, and also changing our view on how we see education. Why is all these degrees and pieces of paper that say that you went through the school and regurgitated all this information more important than somebody that learned how to be a master carpenter, a master welder, or a master electrician, or something like that? I think I would like encourage people to go back towards doing like trades too, and learning skills instead of just having like book knowledge. Like there's obviously degrees that are important and that you need higher education for. Like I'm not saying that we don't need college or education, but how many people do you know that have gone through and gotten a degree, and one, aren't using the degree, or two, don't have a job that's in the field, or like it's kind of like it's a kind of a scheme in a lot of ways if you don't like really know what you want to go do. So I think I would make it more individual and more responsibility of like the family unit versus, or make it the person's choice. I mean, maybe make it, if they want to learn a skill, they can learn a skill, or if they want to go the traditional route of school, then they can go the traditional route of school. But I think I'm always going to lean toward like personal responsibility and personal like choices, and less toward like I need the government to do this for me or structure this for me.
Is there any fear that if you have, say, parents who may act irresponsibly or don't find any value in educating their children, that might lead to children who perpetuate this cycle of uneducation?
Don't we have that already?
What do you mean?
I mean, I think that we already have parents that don't like push their kids in school, and like kids drop out of high school all the time, or even middle school all the time. And I think that goes back again to like, you have to decide for yourself, no matter the situation that you've been put in, no matter what your parents taught you or how you were raised. There comes a point in your life where you have to take responsibility for yourself and change what you can change, and stop blaming everybody else and asking for help from everybody else, or not even asking help, expecting everybody else to help you. You have to do it yourself. You have to figure out like, okay, today I need to, or you just got to come up with a plan on your own to do the things that you want to do. I mean, some people are given a lot of opportunities and other people aren't given any opportunity, but there's people that are successful from both parties, and there are people that are very unsuccessful from both parties too. So to me, it's all about you, like what you do with what you've been given, not what you're given, if that makes sense.
So if I can touch on something we talked about much earlier. So what do you think of companies like Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin or Elon Musk's SpaceX, who are building these giant rockets to go wherever?
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Where have they gone?
So, so what do you think? I guess what exactly are people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos getting out of it? If right?
Yeah. I think that. I mean, there's like money and power to be had in the world. And who knows, like maybe Elon Musk knows that space is fake, and maybe he's part of the, awakening of the masses. Maybe he's going to be like, I've been doing all this research and been trying to get to the moon or trying to do this and trying to do that, and we actually found out that, there's a barrier keeping us in, and we're in an enclosed system. Like, I think that at some point, society is going to break free from like the mainstream of what we've been being told since like America's birth, basically. I mean, we're a pretty new, young country, like not very old, so a lot can happen in that time period. But they had like an opportunity to basically like create a new world, and I don't know if they made a good one or not, but like in a way it's good if you're ignorant. That's like truly now today, ignorance is bliss means a lot more to me than it did before, because it's definitely not always fun being on this side of it's definitely different being on like the alternative side of everything, basically. So you get a lot of ridicule and family talking shit to you and disowning you and blah blah blah, but again, that's their personal opinion and personal choice, and I'm not going to hate on them for thinking I'm crazy. So I don't want them to believe me either. They should look into it for themselves. So, but it shows how shallow of a person they can be if you disagree with somebody that much that you like get mad and disown somebody. Then like, okay, I don't probably want to be friends with you anyway. So, but so yeah, Elon Musk, and is Bezos involved in space exploration?
Yeah, he has his own company called Blue Origin, which is doing basically what SpaceX is doing.
Nice. I think too that there's a lot of like research and technology being created that is not introduced to the public. Like maybe they're potentially like working hand in hand with like military industrial complex to do something else or whatever. There's also like a ton of ocean exploration that gets done by NASA too, that they don't really talk about. They do a lot of their trainings underwater, so I think it's just like a front for other like research and
so what do you think? You say they do a lot of training underwater. What do you? Are they looking for something, or
I don't know.
You don't know.
Maybe. I mean, the most unexplored part of our world is in the oceans. So, like, that's if space doesn't exist, if they found out that space doesn't exist, then what's the final frontier? Is the oceans. So they were just, like, trying to figure out what's down there.
So why do you think, as a community, we are so obsessed with space, and yet it seems, by and large, at least the mainstream seems rather uninterested in the oceans?
Do we have multi-million dollar, multi film, like we have like Star Wars and Star Trek, and like constantly we're being pushed with space like all the time. So I think that's why we're so obsessed with it. I mean, from the time you're a kid, like even like for me, I was born early 90s, like one of the main cartoon characters is Buzz Lightyear. So like you start out, and then before me it's like they were actually the generation that saw it happen on TV, like watch the moon landings happen on TV. So like we've always kind of been, since entertainment and TV has been around, so has space, and it's almost been like a correlation. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, like it's not mainstream because they didn't make it mainstream. I mean, the beginning of coronavirus, if they would have said, Q-tips are going to go out of stock, there's a shortage of Q-tips, what would everybody have done? Gone to the store and got Q-tips, just like they did with toilet paper. But they could have done that with anything. They literally, all they have to do is say it, and people will do it. So, like, I think if you constantly bombard somebody's psyche with an idea and tell somebody a lie long enough, over and over and over, they're going to believe it. And I have noticed a way bigger push of NASA gear and stuff as soon as the like alternative theories started getting pushed more on social media, on Facebook and YouTube and that kind of thing. Because like probably 5 years ago, or no, 4 years ago, like people weren't like running around with like NASA hoodies and NASA this and NASA that, and now it's everywhere, dude. It's like backpacks and shirts and sweats that match, and like everything is NASA. And it's because people are waking up to their BS and they're like, oh crap, they're figuring it out. Push it more, push it more, push it more. NASA, NASA, NASA. We got to get more people obsessed with it. So that's kind of how I see it a little bit. We're kind of inherently prone to following as humans, I think. There's very few that are willing to stand up and like lead.
Do you think that's something we're born with?
I think certain people are. And I think that everybody is born with individual gifts. I think everybody is like special at something, whether it's a physical gift or a supernatural gift or whatever. Like, I think everybody has one, but not everybody is tapped into it. Like, some people may not know what their gift is their whole life, but I think everybody has one. So yeah, I think like there are natural born leaders, but I also think that you can be taught how to be a good leader by a good leader. It's like a learned behavior. So
this is gonna feel kind of like a left turn, but did you vote in this last election?
which one?
The one
2020?
Yeah,
Like 3 days ago?
Yeah.
I did.
Why?
Why did I vote in it? I think that right now we're kind of at a precipice in our country of information, and I think that there's a very obvious like divide in ideals and information, and I think that I think it's a pretty important election. I think it's one of the most important elections. It definitely is in my lifetime, for like reasons of basically what I've been talking about: individual freedoms and individual rights, and the right to believe what you want to believe without being like ostracized for it. I think that our media has done a really great job of taking the extremes from both the left and the right and pushing them in our face for the last 4 years. And when that's all you're consuming and that's all you see, then that breeds negativity in your life, and then you push it on other people, and then anybody that maybe slightly agrees with the other side, you automatically in your head are preconceived to believe that they're a certain way because, oh, well, they like Trump or they like Biden. I mean, I see it on both sides. Like, the left makes fun of people and hates people because they like Trump, and they think they're all racists and all bigots and all sexists but then on the other side, there's a lot of Trump supporters that basically just say the left's stupid and like everything about them is stupid, and they call them libtards and make all kinds of names and jokes and memes, and I don't think either one of those are helpful. I think that like it's a vent for their frustrations about each other, but like it doesn't help us as a country come together and deal with the problems that we have. So yeah, I guess that was a long answer for your question. I did vote.
Do you fear that whichever candidate you vote for, you don't have to say if you don't want to?
I voted for Trump.
Oh, okay.
And I did not vote for Trump in 2016.
So what happened in those 4 years that?
I realized that a lot of the mainstream media was twisting and taking out of context a lot of things that he was saying. I did not like him, like, at all. Dude, I hated him. I talked so much shit about Trump supporters. I voted third party. I was like all the Gary Johnson train. And he won, and I was mad and upset and like, what's going to happen to our country, like thinking doom and gloom like everybody else. And just things started happening with him. A big one was like North Korea. What happened with North Korea, like we were basically like all thinking we were going to get into war with them like pretty soon. They were shooting missiles across the Sea of Japan like every couple weeks, and we're not in war with them. Like, we sat down and had peace talks with them, and now Korea is having peace. South Korea and North Korea are ending the Korean War and having peace talks with each other, and like that was kind of a big eye-opener. And then just like the racist stuff, the sexist stuff, I started looking into like the things that he said and looking into like the whole interviews instead of the snippets, and just kind of slowly my mind was changed. And then I was also seeing like his legislation, his executive orders that he was signing, combating human trafficking, not just here, like globally, like seizing assets of anybody involved in human rights abuses. And then I'm like, why are they hating on somebody so much for like doing this, like doing good things like this, like going after human trafficking or funding historically black college universities, or promoting the first African American woman to be like the head of the Marine Corps, or appointing the first woman CIA director in Gina Haspel, or like all the Middle East peace, like thing after thing after thing. And I'm just like trying to understand how he can be doing all these good things and how the media is like 95% of the time attacking them. And that's when I realized that the media was basically like propaganda arm for the Democratic Party that is predominantly involved in the human trafficking and the sex trafficking and organ harvesting and fetal tissue harvesting and all of this stuff. And Republicans are involved in it too. It's not just Democrats, but it's mostly Democrats right now. And that's when like it just kind of clicked, and like my research got even like deeper into stuff and got more into like the political side of it. And that's what it's kind of been in lately, just because that's what's like happening right now. But yeah, the change for me really was started by how the left acted, really, and it just drew my attention to like why are they acting like this when this is happening in reality? So, but that comes from turning off one channel and looking at multiples. You know, I think people get sucked into, well, I watch CNN, well, I watch Fox, well, I watch MSNBC, well, I watch this one or that one, and then you're just stuck there. I mean, you can see it in the election. You flip to all of those different channels, and the numbers are literally all different. So you're basically choosing, like, which one you want to believe. So it's weird. We're in a weird time. It's like information warfare overload, I think. So, and then you get into all the censoring that was happening too, surrounding what Trump was doing. So, like on big tech, on Twitter, on Facebook, and people that are like spreading the truth about the human trafficking and sex trafficking and stuff, and all the busts, and like they're getting scrubbed off Twitter. Like, you don't censor nonsense. Like, if it's nonsense and conspiracies, then why would you censor it? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. I think like that happens when you're over the target, in my opinion. So
then is Trump kind of outside of these kind of different societies? They're kind of global. Like, is he?
Trump's interesting because, like, he's obviously been around he's been part of, like, the, like, fame crew forever. Like, as long as I've been alive, like, he's been, like, a prominent, like, famous person. A few things that I didn't know about him that are interesting to me, that made me kind of see that he wasn't, like, part of, like, what I see as, like, the evil groups. He was never a politician. He was just getting into it. He's a businessman. He was very good friends with JFK Jr. So good friends with the Kennedys, who we all know were political outsiders. I mean, they killed JFK, they killed Bobby, they killed JFK Jr. So Trump's, like, in with that family on the outside already. Like, back in, I think JFK Jr. died in 2000, when he was coincidentally running against Hillary Clinton for senator in New York State, just to throw that out there. But I think that he's kind of been planning to become president to kind of take down and finish what the Kennedys started. Like, because the Kennedys, I mean, you can look at JFK's speeches about, like, crushing the CIA into a million pieces and, like, going after the shadow government, basically. And I think that Trump's doing the same thing, and has been on the outskirts and been rubbing elbows and gaining information on people, and since, like, a long time ago. I don't know exactly when. Another thing is, like, he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't do drugs. So when he's at all these parties with all these famous people who are, like, sloshed, he's sober. He's there working, gating intel, finding out what everybody likes, what they dislike, what their habits are, what their vices are. And, I mean, I kind of think he's, like, a genius in a way. So he has the second highest IQ of any U.S. president ever. So John Adams was number 1, Trump's number 2. But, so yeah, I just view him as, like, an outsider. Like, he doesn't take any of the money that, like, none of his salary has gone to him. He's donated all of it. His net worth has gone down. And then if you look at other politicians, like the Obamas, the Clintons, Pelosi, Adam Schiff, Republican, like the McCains, the Bushes, Mitt Romney, look at the Bidens. You can look at all of these, like, main political figures and look at their net worth before they got into politics, and then look at it now, and then you look at the salary that they're making as that political figure, and it doesn't add up. So you're like, who's the criminal here? I mean, I would rather have a millionaire become a politician and fight corruption than have another corrupt politician continue the corruption. Because, like, we know that there's political corruption. And I don't know why we're pretending that all of a sudden, now that Trump is in office, there's no political corruption. It's only Trump that's corrupt. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. When we know that there's been fishy stuff going on with our government for a long time.
Well, I don't want to waste too much of your time. Is there
It's all good. This is what I do, man.
is there anything you feel like we didn't talk about that we need to talk about?
I think, like, the final thing I would want to say to people, again, is to just, like, reiterate, like, don't just take what I say and be like, oh, that dude doesn't know what he's talking about, or, like, he's crazy, or whatever, or this or that, or, like, automatically freak out after listening to this whole interview because I said Trump or something like that. Just, like, take what I say and chew on it, look some stuff up. Like, I think that people just need to, like, start researching things for themselves and start looking at information for themselves, and, like, stop trusting the big names. Like, we got to stop trusting Facebook and Twitter and the New York Times and CNN and Fox and all of these giant entities, because they're part of the system that we're all so desperately screaming that we want out of it. Like, everybody is on both sides. Nobody's happy on either side. We're all wanting help. We're all screaming for help, but we're not looking at all the information that's being given to us. And I kind of feel like we have our answer in front of us, and Trump is the answer to solving a lot of these problems within our society. Obviously not perfect. He's obviously brash and has made rude remarks, but, like, I'd rather have somebody that's fighting for individuals than somebody that's fighting for the agenda. So just look into things for yourself, I think, is the last thing that I want to say. And, like, be open-minded, and it's okay to disagree with somebody, and it's okay to not follow everybody else. Like, that's good. Like, we need more ideas and we need more theories. That's what science is having a theory and testing it. Like, why are we just like, okay, this is science and now we believe it, and that's it? And it's like, oh, it was in my textbook, so I believe it. Like, look into it. So
Awesome. Thank you.
yep.